Hey everyone, welcome to Logan's Mosh Pit. Glad to have you here. Do me a favor and please subscribe if you haven't already. Ow! It's hot off the press. I can't wait to dive into this brand spanking new November 2022 Guitar World magazine. I picked an interview conducted by John Widerhorn with Lamb of God guitarist Willie Adler and Mark Morton, who both discussed their outstanding new album called Omens. Don't worry, I'm going to say the person's name before each question so you don't get confused. Let's begin. Willie, can you elaborate on your reservations to leave home and start working on Omens? We started writing so close on the heels of us putting out the self-titled, so I was butthurt by the idea of moving on. I thought that record was great and encompassed everything we did well. That we had to put it out in 2020 was a kick in the balls, and I was so bummed out. Also, I was freaking out because I was thinking that anything we wrote would be regarded as too close and too similar to what we did on the self-titled, but it's really not. The stuff is vastly different. Willie, do you think you were being cynical or curmudgeonly at the get-go? It just felt to me like it was too soon. I was writing this new stuff just a few months after we were writing the self-titled record, so it's not that far of a stretch to think that anything else I wrote would be in that same vein. When we started, there were a handful of riffs that were reminiscent of New Colossal Hate or other things from the last record, but we just scrapped those and moved on with the intention of making songs different from anything we had done, while still having our stamp. Once we started doing that, I felt better. Mark, you didn't share Willie's concerns about starting a new record without having properly toured for the self-titled release. I don't want to contradict Willie, but I didn't feel like we even toured for that album. So to me, the album was released and then we were off on the road for a year and a half. If you started playing shows a year and a half after a record is released, I don't feel you're touring that album anyway. Also, I don't tie touring to recorded work. Those are two completely different spheres of activity for me. I understand some people see it in a different way, and I think Willie and Randy do as well. But when I'm writing and recording in the studio, I'm part of making a piece of music that people are going to listen to. It's going to stand alone and be its own thing for as long as they care to listen to it. And it doesn't have anything to do with how many shows we play after it comes out, so I don't feel ripped off at all. Mark, were you at all worried that anything you wrote might sound too similar to what you did on the self-titled album? Not at all. I have music running around in my head all the time, and I'm thrilled at the chance to get to write more songs with these guys and record in a new way and in a new place and try new ideas. It's my favorite part of what we do. Willie, at what point did you decide you were on board and that doing a new Lamb of God album didn't necessitate repeating yourself? As soon as we started working, I saw Mark was right, and I came to realize there was no reason not to work on the next record. It's not like the pandemic was going away anytime soon at that point. It wasn't like we were going to be able to support the self-titled record anymore. So when we got together in February 2021, Mark and I decided to gravitate more toward down-tuning. The majority of this record is in C and Grayscale is in B. Then there are a couple songs in D and one in E. We've done songs in C before, so it didn't feel awkward, but it was different than doing most of your songs in drop D. Mark, what were the first songs you wrote together for Omens? Things came together in chunks, and then Willie and I worked to change parts around and turn these different sections into songs. There were large chunks of Nevermore and Ditch in the first batch of stuff that I brought in, and we were able to work on those right away. Mark, Nevermore was the first track you premiered prior to releasing the album, right? We wanted something that was a little different for us. There's half a verse, then a return to the riff, and then another half verse. Those musical twists are very deliberate. We wanted to give the song a different kind of swagger than our typical 12x8. Willie, what did you bring to the table for the first round of songwriting? It's funny, I brought in demos of Vanishing and September Song, and they couldn't have been more different. We did Vanishing in its entirety musically, exactly how it is on the demo. We didn't touch it at all. It just lived. I think that might be one of the first songs we've done that hasn't been picked apart by everyone. I need a trophy for that one. Willie, what about September Song, an epic album closer with delicate arpeggios, ebow, and strings? The demo for that one was vastly different from what the final song is like. We really didn't know what to do with it when I brought it in. The whole acoustic intro was some last minute, and we did that all during one of the last pre-production sections. Mark jumps in and adds, "The biggest thing about September Song was that it got slowed down dramatically. It didn't start out as this epic, expansive thing. It's very up-tempo, probably 250 beats per minute, and then we cut the tempo in half and did this clean, ambient-sounding intro, and it turned into a totally different thing. Mark, why didn't you keep it fast and furious like so many of your best songs?" Sometimes songs are cool with that energy and that speed, but it just felt fine. It felt okay. And we wanted to try every angle we could think of to make it more than fine or okay, and to see if there's something we're missing and if we're not doing it justice. In this case, we weren't allowing it to be where it felt best. Josh suggested slowing it down, and it turned into this plodding, driving thing. We saw how massive and moving and almost anthemic that chord progression felt, and we started filling the song out from there. I always feel like the last song on the album is a very coveted position, so I thought we should make that different and special. But it was Willie's song. He was the creative director for it, even though I added a lot of parts. So I started lobbying him pretty hard. "Yo, this has gotta be an album closer, and that's dope." And he was cool with making all the changes and turning it into this epic track. Willie, one of the heaviest songs on the album is Grayscale, which features minor key harmony guitar lines reminiscent of Slayer. In the back of my mind, those little notes in the verse were absolutely Slayer. I wrote Grayscale not even necessarily for this record. I wrote it out of pure emotion back when we were in quarantine and everything seemed... I went, let me write the heaviest thing I can make right now. I sent it to Josh for and giggles, and he went, "Holy dude, why haven't you brought this to the table for the album?" I kind of laughed. I went, "Why? Is it cool?" And he said, "It's really cool." And I went, "Alright, well yeah, sure, let's do it." And we totally turned it into Lamb of God. Willie, once the songs were written and finessed, was it easy to record the main tracks live in the studio? Nothing was easy, but a lot of it was fun. We tracked it as a band, and that's the first time we've done that since As the Palaces Burn or New American Gospel. It was the real old school rock and roll, man. Just the whole band in there, getting mic'd up. We each had headphones, and just played together kind of like we do on stage. It has its downsides because there was a lot of sitting around afterward and getting stuff fine-tuned. Obviously there was tracking going on outside of those live takes, but we were able to capture a lot of moments and a lot of energy that we felt were missing from a lot of the more recent Lamb of God records. Mark adds, the real pinnacle of that for me was when we all set up at Henson Studios in Los Angeles in the live tracking room, and we all played at once. It was electrifying! Every drum track was recorded with the entire band playing and Randy singing. Substantially more than half of the main vocals you hear on the album were from those room takes, and large chunks of the guitars were used as well, so this is a very hands-on, genuine, and authentic live element to this album, and I think it's pretty uncommon for bands these days to work that way. Willie, did playing at the same time allow you to capture the differences between your live guitar sounds more accurately than on past records? Mark and I definitely have our own tones live, and those are what we used. Definitely prefer scooping mids, and Mark is super nasally on his mids. It works, and that's part of the magic of our live sound. We've always tried to capture that in the studio, and I think this time we really did it, along with capturing the energy of all of us playing together. Mark, can you describe what's so special about the way the two of you write and play together? I think what it comes down to is this juxtaposition. You take my more conventional rock and roll influence playing, but with a heavy hand and heavy grooves. When you combine that with Willie's very out-of-the-box, unconventionally note choices and timing, and his unreal technicality, that's what makes the music really powerful. Swirling those two things up is what makes Lamb of God sound like Lamb of God. Randy has called Omens a dark, angry record. Mark, do you think it's a reflection of the last 2 years of chaos, death, and destruction across the world from the U.S. to Ukraine? first and foremost, we're an aggressive metal band. If you're a filmmaker who makes horror movies, you intend for them to be scary. We intend for things to sound heavy and dark, so that comes with the territory. But it's been a crazy few years, and it's impossible to be alive and not feel that shift in energy, and not be confused and scared by it, or not be angered by a lot of it. So as artists who make dark, heavy creations, that's a wellspring of energy to draw from. But it doesn't mean that we were angry and dark all the time. It's interesting that the inner workings, the personal relationships, and the vibe in the band are more positive these days than ever. Mark, if you had any concrete goals going into Omens, do you think you met them? Ultimately, my biggest goal with this one was to make sure it had its own personality and exist uniquely as its own entity, and I think we accomplished that. Last question, Mark. How would you describe the personality of the record in terms of character traits? This album is pretty combative. I find it to be pretty confrontational, but it's got depth. It's got a more stylistic delivery within the confines of being a metal record, and I think it's really genuine and inspired. I hear a lot of ourselves in it. We were all very, very invested in this record on a very personal level, so it sounds very alive and angry. But more than just being angry, I feel like it's a problem child. That's what I told Josh. It's a very independent, disrespectful problem child. We had to fight it all the way to the end. But we had a deep love and respect for the personality it exhibited. Oh, that Lamb of God interview wasn't too bad. By the way, I left a link to the title track from the Omens album in the description. Go check it out. Stay tuned for more great Guitar Magazine content. That does it for today's video, guys. I hope you enjoyed. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. I really appreciate the support. I'll see you next time. Till then, rock on.